Welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast, where we talk about fitness, health, and anything to help you become the most optimal human beings. Let's dive into it.
Hey, Jerred Moon here, and welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about injury and some things that you should consider, things that you might want to do, things that you want to avoid, because it all happens. I mean, it's going to happen to every single one of us at some point. Getting injured, while we do our best to avoid it altogether, sometimes it just comes with the territory of not sitting on our asses, right? So we are out there, we're doing things, we're doing above and beyond just walking and bicep curls. So an injury is bound to occur at some point, especially if you enjoy doing things that are a little bit more athletic. If you still continue to play sports as you get older, anything like that, you will get injured. And I've been injured a number of times, never anything too serious. I've had a tweaked knee, a tweaked shoulder, those kind of things. My worst and most long-term injury, which I've talked about quite a bit on the podcast, was when I hurt my lower back. So this is when I was doing a ton of volume, and I was chasing that goal of being able to do the 500-pound back squat and the 5-minute mile. And so I was increasing volume. To be honest, I wasn't paying attention to much else. I really only have myself to blame getting injured there. I wasn't factoring in nutrition all that much. I was just kind of doing what I was doing. I still had a very hectic work and life schedule. To go after a goal like that, I should have been more prepared. I really thought that I could handle that training volume better than I did. And looking back at it, it's quite obvious why I was injured. I wasn't all there mentally. I wasn't adjusting to the volume in slow enough increments. And while my nutrition was clean, I was not eating enough. I was not consuming enough protein, those kind of things. So there are a lot of considerations, but ended up hurting my lower back. And that one was tough because it lasted for pretty much a year and a half, maybe even a little bit longer with lingering. Like, it was severe for probably 6 to 8 months. I did a lot of physical therapy and other stuff, and then I got better. But what would happen is every time I would start to increase the load, that injury would start to come back. So I realized quickly, like, I was just going to have to kind of start at square one and go and build back very slowly. And that's what I've done. I mean, right now I feel great. Just to update everyone on that, like, I'm training. I brought my intensity back. Weights are coming back up. I'm not trying to get anywhere close to 500 pounds on the squat or anything like that, but still lifting moderate to heavy loads every single week. Running fast again, running at higher intensities, and I feel pretty good. But having been, like I said, injured a few times, I think there's some considerations I take in. Just having read a lot of research and done this stuff a lot, there's a lot of things that I do and take into consideration that I don't think I've, voiced enough. And I think that it could really help you if you come across a time period where you're either injured, and this could be an acute injury, something smaller, like, hey, I'm going to be out for 5 to 7 days. You just kind of know it's a tweak that's going to get better. These are considerations. This is also a consideration if you do have a longer term injury, things that you want to think about, or if you just have decreased training load due to same kind of category of like a chronic injury. Something just doesn't feel right, so you're not training as hard, or you're not training the way that you should. So this is kind of why I'm making this podcast, is that I want you to be able to take into considerations a lot of the things that I'm taking into consideration. And I was looking at 2 specific studies in preparation for this podcast. So one was done in 2022, and it's called Nutritional Considerations for Injury Prevention in Recovery and Combat Sports. I really liked that one. It was very in-depth review. And then there was another study, very similar, a lot of overlap, but I like to pull from multiple places. This one was done in 2020. Rehabilitation nutrition for injury recovery of athletes, the role of macronutrient intake. And so I'm going to they're both very long studies, but you can Google either one of those, or you can go to the show notes and you can see exactly what I've seen and what we see in the research. But I'm kind of just pulling out what I think is important. And one thing that was an underlying theme that I believe to be true, and also in the research, um, if you are injured, so this is like, let's go to step 0 here if we're working through multiple things. Step 0 is going to be you need to keep moving. Now, if this is some sort of very severe, acute, like impact, like maybe it was combat sports, or maybe you play soccer, or something like that, like it's an injury where there was an impact, and you have to immobilize, a joint, then that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. I'm not saying like, hey, if your knee's super jacked up, keep moving it. That's not what I'm saying. But if you have a tweaked muscle, or knee or elbow or shoulder or something like that, or lower back, don't let it be an excuse to quit moving altogether, because a lot of the things I'm going to hit on that were in the research that have to do with muscle protein synthesis, and muscle atrophy, all of the things that I'm going to talk about work better if you're still moving, at least in some capacity. So, for instance, in my garage, I have multiple different cardio machines. So I have a treadmill, I have I have all the concept machines. So I have a concept 2 rower, concept 2 bike, and a ski erg. And I did have an Airdyne that I got rid of, but I'll probably get another one of those soon. Anyway, I have a lot of different options for one, how I feel, and then also like what's going on. And so if my knee or foot or something is not feeling good, then I can get on the ski erg and I can do upper body conditioning, and I can still do whatever strength training that I can do. And I say that because I broke my foot a couple of years ago, and that's what I had to do. I had to do a lot of upper body. I couldn't run for a long time, and then even when I hurt my lower back, it was just finding out what I could do, and I had to cut out some of the things that I absolutely love, which was like long bike rides, running. I wouldn't say I love running, but it's just an easy form of cardio, um, to get done, that you can do. Just put on the shoes and get out there and go. So you have to keep moving. You want to keep some level of keeping your muscles engaged, breathing, sweating. So don't quit moving. I feel like that is a lot of people's natural reaction sometimes. It's like, hey, I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to stop doing everything I'm doing and get better. That's not the way you want to get better. You want to wait if you have to, if there's like a couple days, like, for inflammation to go down or whatever. Okay, wait it out, but then you need to start moving again, need to start loading again, just in different capacities. And if you need to work with like a movement-based physical therapist, something like that, then I highly recommend it as well. So that's the first thing. Keep moving. Now, the biggest thing I think to consider nutritionally is protein. And what I pulled from the research, um, is very in line with kind of my beliefs about protein. So you're going to need about 2.3 grams per kilogram when you're injured. This is the injury recommendation. So I'm a 185-pound male. That comes out to being around 193 grams of protein. So slightly over that 1 gram per pound. And that's something that you want to consider. I think it's okay to eat around 1 gram per pound or less. Um, you know, not a whole lot less, but like if I'm 185 and I'm eating 160 grams of protein a day, and I'm not injured, then that's perfectly fine. I think that you're still getting enough muscle protein synthesis. You're having enough protein because we can base it off your lean body mass, all these other things. So I think that there's a range there. But when you're injured, I think that you have to that's not as much as consideration. Protein is the building blocks of your bodies, of your cells. Like, you need protein, and when you're injured, you need more protein. So going up to 2.3 grams per kilogram. So like I said, 185-pound males, 193 grams of protein. And another big point was that you need to do your best to evenly distribute that throughout the day. So let's just round up to it being 200 grams of protein for me in a day. I would want to eat do my best to have 4 meals, and each meal being around that 50-gram protein per mark, because there's research that's saying muscle protein synthesis can be up to 25% greater if we have it evenly distributed throughout the day, as opposed to I'm going to kind of eat junk carbs all day and then I'm going to try to backload the day and get a bunch of protein at night. Like, that's not how you want to do it. And to be honest, a lot of people kind of do that. They have a bagel and cream cheese for breakfast, whatever for lunch, and then maybe they have a steak and chicken for dinner, and they try to get like 100 grams all in one meal. That's not what you want to do. If you want to increase muscle protein synthesis, especially when you're injured, you want to try and distribute that protein evenly throughout the day. And another big factor, and I've talked about it a good amount on the podcast, is you want to make sure that you're getting enough leucine. So leucine is a lot of what triggers muscle protein synthesis. And from this research, from what I pulled, it was about the same that I kind of stumble on. The magic number around 2 grams of leucine is about what you're looking to hit. And just to give some context to this 2 grams of leucine, if you eat a 6-ounce steak, that's around 5 grams of leucine. So meat has a ton, like just a ton of leucine. And then one egg has over 500 milligrams of leucine. So if you're eating 3 eggs, that's 1.5 grams of leucine. And if you add anything else to that, you're easily going to pass that 2-gram threshold. So those are all of the protein considerations. Another thing to throw in there, or some research that was in here quite a bit, was creatine. Seems to help with decreasing muscle loss, because when we're injured, that's the main thing that we're trying to do. We're trying not to lose our gains. We're also trying to let our body, give the body all the tools that it needs to rebuild and repair, reduce inflammation. And so that's why we're focusing on all of these things. And so creatine has some research that definitely shows that it can help alleviate muscle loss when you're injured. So their recommendations and what the research said was anywhere from 5 grams to 20 grams of creatine per day. I think you only ever need about 5 grams of creatine a day. I always think that 20-gram mark is kind of crazy, even when you're injured. But if you're not taking creatine at all, maybe when you're injured, increase the protein amount. If you increase the protein amount, you're probably naturally going to get more creatine, because if you are eating meat, it has a lot of creatine in it already. But then if you want to add some creatine on top of that, because you feel like you're not getting enough, or if you are more plant-based or something like that, you're definitely going to want to add some creatine in there. Next is just calories. So making sure that you're getting enough calories. Pretty interesting stat. So when you are injured, your body's energy expenditure can increase by 50%. Some of the research said it can go 2 to 3 times, 2 to 3 fold its baseline, dependent on the severity of the injury, obviously. I'm going to go ahead and say that the injuries that I'm talking about and that you might be experiencing are not necessarily in that camp of doubling your need for calories. But could there be a 25, 30%, 50% bump necessary for you to be able to heal properly? Yes. And again, goes kind of counter. It's a little bit counterintuitive to what we naturally want to do sometimes. Is like, okay, I'm hurt. I'm not going to move. I'm not going to train. That's a lot of people make that decision, and that's the wrong decision. Like, you just need to move differently, not move how you are. You need to move differently. You still need to have the body moving, get blood flow, get nutrients in and out of the affected area. And then sometimes people are like, well, I'm not training as much now. I'm going to eat less. I'm not going to eat as much food. So if you make those 2 decisions alone, you are compounding how long it's going to take to recover. I don't have any specific research saying, yeah, if you do those 2 things, it's going to take 3 extra months. But if you think about it, you're just not doing what the body needs. You're no longer exercising, which helps reduce the amount of muscle loss you would have. It also helps with blood flow, like I mentioned. And then also, if you're reducing calories, you're not giving the body what it needs to actually repair the damage that's been done. So you need to make sure that you have the proper amount of calories. And one of the interesting things I pulled, so again, going back to me being 185 pounds, they said that if you're eating less than 30 calories per kilogram in this study, there's some research that says that's where you start to have some hormonal issues. That's where it starts to affect the hormones. So for me, this is 30 calories per kilogram of fat-free mass. So very specifically of fat-free mass. That's an important indicator if you're trying to calculate this yourself. So if you were looking to calculate this for me, let's just say, let's just make it a round number. So 185 pounds, if I was 20% body fat, 20% body fat would be roughly 148, 148 pounds of lean body mass, fat-free mass. So then I'd multiply that by 30. I'm right at that 2,000 calorie mark. Okay, so that's like the threshold, like the baseline. If I start to trickle down below that at all, I'm going to be into some hormonal issues. I'm starting to screw up my body's hormones, which are the opposite of what you want to do when you're injured. And ever. That's why it's always bad to undereat, because when you undereat, you start to screw with your hormones. You need to be eating enough calories and enough protein. And so stay away from that bottom line threshold. Again, that's 30 calories per kilogram of fat-free mass. Now, the goal, specifically in this study, was around 45 calories per kilogram. So going back to me being 185, let's say I'm 20% body fat, that bumps it up 1,000 calories. So the goal should be a minimum 3,000 calories per day, which is fairly close to my actual maintenance calories anyway. So I'd probably even want to bump that up a little bit right after the injury. So I'm going to make sure, actually walking through this. If I got hurt today, I went outside or went out to the garage, I trained, I'm hurt. I know that for a fact I hurt myself. Like, oh crap. Immediately I'm switching to nutrition. Okay, I'm focusing on, okay, I just got to get enough protein right now, and I need to get enough calories. Let my body do its thing. Let my body heal itself to the best of its ability. And so I'm going to increase my calories. I'm going to make sure I get enough protein. And you're going to do that probably for the first week. Then after that, stick with the protein, and then maybe calories can come down a little bit because you're not in that acute zone where you need that 50% bump in calories, which again, I think is a lot. It has to be a pretty severe injury to do something like that. But definitely something you want to keep in mind, making sure that you're getting that 45 calories per kilogram of fat-free mass. So again, that's about 3,000 calories if I were 20% body fat at 185. So those are the main things. There were a lot of other things, but there's some like conflicting data um, on antioxidants, vitamin D, just micronutrients in general. And so I don't have an exact recommendation, even after looking at all of these two big studies. I would go ahead and say, just my gut feeling here is you're going to want micronutrients, right? It's not like you're trying to avoid those or they're unimportant. And I wouldn't go overboard with trying to have any antioxidants. I definitely wouldn't start to supplement with large doses of vitamin C or just antioxidants in general. But I'm still going to make sure I'm getting antioxidants, and I'm still going to make sure I'm getting micronutrients. So when I'm injured, I don't want to put any crap in my body because I don't believe pizza is more effective at giving my body what it needs, as opposed to having, greens and blueberries and fruits and vegetables and all those things. And so while I won't put an emphasis on, hey, you should have this much vitamin D and you should have this much vitamin C, I think all of those things are helpful, but I would just get them naturally through diet, and I would focus more on having whole foods, fruits, and vegetables every single day that I was injured. I can't give you the amounts. Really, I couldn't pull it from here anyway. A lot of, like I said, the data was pretty conflicting. So just make sure that you're getting as many micronutrients as you possibly can. And then making sure you're getting antioxidants. Again, this is just through whole foods, no supplementation of any of these things, because there is some research that's saying antioxidants after injury weren't necessarily a good thing. And then a whole bunch of conflicting research on vitamin C and vitamin D and all those things. So we've kind of looked at this on the podcast before. If you have too many antioxidants, it can get in the way of doing what the body needs to some degree. It can blunt what the body's trying to do, but that's more in like a hypertrophy standpoint, like the effects of like cold exposure, for example, can blunt muscle hypertrophy, muscle growth, really just because it's getting in the way of what the body wants to do by reducing inflammation too much. And antioxidants can do the same thing. So again, don't go overboard with those things, but definitely prioritize eating real whole foods, fruits, and vegetables. One of the last things, this is big, is like what to avoid. And this was hands down, like, do avoid alcohol at all cost. You should not be drinking alcohol during this time frame when you are injured. It all studies point to alcohol reducing muscle protein synthesis, which is the opposite of what we're wanting to do. We're wanting to build our body back better after we've been injured. You don't want to reduce muscle protein synthesis. Alcohol can do that. Also, it has been shown to decrease wound healing. So that's no good. You don't want that to happen either. Even if you don't have an actual wound, it seems like there is some sort of correlation to alcohol really just making your body less effective at doing the things that it needs to do. And so avoid alcohol. The worst thing that you could do. So the worst thing that you could do if you're like, hey, I'm injured. One, I can't do anything I like to do. So now I'm depressed. Since I'm depressed, I'm going to start drinking more alcohol in the evenings. So what am I doing when I'm drinking more alcohol in the evening? I'm decreasing muscle protein synthesis, decreasing wound healing, and I'm screwing with my sleep. So I'm screwing with my sleep. And then also, you know what? I don't think I'm going to move anymore because I'm injured and I shouldn't move. So I'm drinking alcohol. I'm not sleeping. I'm not moving as much. And then, you know what? I'm also going to eat less because I don't want to gain weight, right? That's the thought process. And this is what a lot of people do. This is not a far-fetched thing. Like, even if you don't feel like you do that, I know people go through this little cycle that I just mentioned. So we have more alcohol, less sleep, fewer calories, and we're not moving at all. So you're going to be injured for a long time. So that acute injury will probably turn into a chronic injury, and it will probably come back over and over again. And then once you come back and you're so far behind where you wanted to be or where you left off, that's going to be probably start the cycle over because you're slightly depressed and your performance is way off. You don't look how you used to. So you have to be very mindful of these things. Okay. And the absolute last thing, and I kind of mentioned it there, this was more of like nutritional considerations, but making sure that you're sleeping enough. Whatever you have to do to your schedule to go to bed earlier, wake up later, but be consistent in your sleep and wake times, going to sleep and wake times. That would be, a superpower for when you're injured. So getting 8-9 hours of sleep every single day, I think, are super important to this overall process. So if you can factor in all of this, so the second you get injured, maybe come back to this podcast if unfortunately you ever do get injured in the process of your training career, and just take into considerations everything I gave you. So we're going to keep moving. We're going to find a way to keep moving our bodies. We're going to make sure that we have enough protein. We're going to actually increase it 2.3 grams per kilogram of body weight. We're also going to focus on getting enough leucine. We're going to start adding creatine, and then we're going to make sure that we're eating enough, at least 45 calories per kilogram of fat-free mass. And then we're going to avoid alcohol, and we're going to sleep a lot, as much as we can. If you do all of these things, you will 100% increase your time to recovery and reduce your overall injury, time injured and your time out of training. And then once you start coming back, just come back slowly. If you're feeling great one day, don't just pedal to the metal. I ran into that a couple times when I thought I was better, and I was like, fine, great. Like, let's load 400 back on the bar. Not what I should have done. I just thought I was 100% better when I wasn't, and that just prolonged things. So come back slowly. See a physical therapist if you have to. Take in all of these considerations, but that's basically it for when you get injured. So nutrition considerations during injury or decreased training volume. If you have any questions, let me know. And if you are one of our Garage Gym athletes, hopefully you stay uninjured, but I do appreciate you sticking around, sticking with the programming and listening to the podcast. If you guys enjoy the podcast, please 5-star review, positive comment, really helps out a lot. And if you want to be a part of the community and a part of the training, you can go to garagegymathlete.com and sign up for a 14-day free trial. We would love to have you. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching or listening. And remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you.